All right. So I just launch into it. I don't make a big song or dance on my podcast.
Yeah.
So you ready? We're ready. All right. Welcome to the Cameron Jackson Show. I'm here today at the Bond Studios. Is that
Yes.
is that how I would put it?
Yes.
Yes, with Jesse Peterson, Reverend Jesse Peterson. Thank you so much for being on the Cameron Jackson Show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Gosh, Jesse is the author of The Antidote, Healing America from the Poison of Hate, Blame, and Victimhood. Jesse, tell me a little bit about your life back in the South and how you got here to L.A.
Well, I was born on a plantation down in Alabama, right outside of Montgomery, near Tuskegee area. And I was raised up there. We grew up under the Jim Crow laws. And during that time, we had no problems. You know, we worked every day. We went to school. We played around as kids. My grandparents worked. My grandfather ran the plantation, so everybody had to work. I knew about the so-called Jim Crow laws and that black people couldn't live in certain places or go to certain schools because I remember for colors only sign. But during those days, black people knew that it wasn't all white people. It was just the Democrats had a law that says black can't move about because the Jim Crow laws was done by the Democrats. So. But we still knew all white people that way. So we were not taught to hate white people, but to treat people the way we would like to be treated, to work hard, and that we can make it in America.
And as a kid, you were primarily brought up by your grandparents?
Yes.
And so at some point, you had a relationship with your father, though, right?
Right. Well,
and you make a point about how special that relationship was when he was around.
Yeah. Well, I would sneak around and have a relationship with him. My father got my mother pregnant, and when she told him about it, she denied it. I mean, he denied it. When she told him about it, he was like, "No, that's not my baby. I can't make a baby." And my mother became angry at him, and from that point forward, she didn't want anything to do with him. And so, but because it was an embarrassment to have children out of wedlock, she got married to my stepfather before I was born. And so I was born with him, as his son. But my grandmother finally told me who my real father was because I knew this guy wasn't my father, just something in me that let me know. And I would, whenever he would come down to Alabama to visit from Indiana, they had moved up to Indiana, he would sneak around and see me. And whenever I would see my father, like seeing God, I felt completed. And when he would leave, I would feel that emptiness again. And then I went up to Indiana for a while and lived there for a while. I would sneak around and be with my father. And my stepfather was a nice guy. He wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't abusive, so-called abusive. But my soul never accepted him. I was yearning for my real father.
And so at some point in what I saw in the book was that you eventually, though, got some resentment towards the fact that your father wasn't around.
Yeah.
And that resentment really affected you in a negative way, especially when you came out here to Los Angeles. Can you talk about that, how that happened in your transition out here to L.A.?
Well, I realized that I had this emptiness, like this yearning in my body for my father. And I would ask my mother about him. And she would say, "Oh, he's no good. Forget about him. He doesn't care about you." And she hated him. But when I asked God to let me see what was wrong, because I was going to church here in L.A., and I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, giving tithes and going to church and working on committees, but nothing was working. And so finally I asked God to let me see what was wrong. One thing that happened before that, I had started listening to Louis Farrakhan and Jesse Jackson and all those people, and they were teaching that white people were the problem. And so the first time in my life, I started to resent white people. And I believed that they were my enemies, when in reality they wasn't. And so I finally, time went by, and I started to wonder, if I'm black and can't make it because of white people, why is it Jackson and their families and everybody else doing fine? And they're black too. It seemed like white people be holding them back. And I realized that they had lied to us, because God allowed me to see that it was the resentment I had for my mother and the yearning for my father that was holding me back. And so I thought that was amazing to see that. And so I went and forgave my mother. She came out here to visit her sister, and I went over there to forgive her. And I had this fear that took over, and I realized it came from when I was growing up, and I asked her about him, and she would be angry about that, or she'd yell or something. And I realized that she had intimidated me. And so I went and I forgave her. My life changed right away. It had already changed by me realizing that it was wrong to resent her. And I forgave, because you become like what you hate. That's why you see a lot of men who are just like women. They get angry, they're emotional, they live in their imagination, they can't handle anything because they have the mindset and emotions of a woman. And they'll look into a woman to make them feel good because they hate their mothers. And so they yearn, and you become attracted to what you hate. And every woman they get involved with is mama. That's why they become the son and the woman become the mother.
And is that something that is unique to the black experience in America, or is that just
all men?
All men.
All men who become boys with their mothers, with their wives, meaning that they're afraid to stand up to their wife, they're afraid to correct her, or when she get angry and yelling at the kids, they're afraid to correct her, is a woman. They got that from their mother. And so so they're attracted to their mothers and don't know it, so they get lookalikes.
And is that so? When I was a police officer down in San Diego, and I worked in primarily a black community.
Right.
And I also, in San Diego, we had magnet schools and whatnot. And so we had people from the black community that were bussed into my school.
Right.
And so I grew up next to inner city black kids. And then I worked in the inner city, the black inner city.
Yes.
And what I saw, and this is one reason why your book spoke so much to me, was because what I saw and experienced in the black community was a complete breakdown of the black family.
Yes.
And it, for me, all the problems of black America, it seemed to me, and the black community, especially in San Diego, which is, I'm sure, very similar to here in LA,
yes.
right?
Yes.
What was that breakdown of the family?
That's right.
Why did that family unit break down? What happened?
During the so-called civil rights movement, headed up by Martin Luther King and others, at some point they said to black people that they agreed with the Democratic Party that the black people needed help, financial help and all that, jobs and stuff. And so they told black people, well, come to us, we'll take care of you. We're going to give you affirmative action. We're going to give you free welfare. Well, not affirmative action, but free welfare and all that. But you can't have a man in the home. And so blacks decided, okay, we'll take the government support, but they couldn't have a father in the home. And that's when everything went downhill, because there's a spiritual order to life. Whether we like it or not, or agree with it or not, or live it or not, there's God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children. And when you break that order by destroying the man, move him out of the family, things turn upside down. And so the government became the daddy of black people, most, not all. And then the so-called civil rights leader became the leader of the people. And so they used them to get power and wealth by pretending that racism existed and all that kind of stuff. But when you remove that father, that's what happened to the black people. Everything fall apart. And if you notice, the average black man and the black woman, whether boys or girls, are very angry. And that the men...
That's the one thing that I saw a lot of when I worked the streets, was just the anger, the raw anger
that's
out
right.
there. And that's what that comes from.
And it wasn't like that when I was growing up. That changed during the civil rights movement. And the men went in hiding because they wanted the welfare for the women. And then women became puffed up and no longer felt like they needed the men, especially when the women's movement started and all that stuff. They catered to the blacks too because they wanted their support. And so now, because they removed their father, we now have a devastation situation happening. You have abortions in the black community. 77% of Planned Parenthood located in the black communities. Everybody and mama having the abortions. The average black man isn't worth a dime. He's angry and emotional, act just like a woman. He looked to the government or the woman to take care of him. And if they do luck out and get a woman, he become a little boy with her. She become the mama, he become the boy. And it's just a mess. And nothing's going to change until we can change that. Bring men back to God.
And what do you think?
Because by the way, the civil rights movement was the enemy and the destruction of the black community. That's when it started.
Yeah, one of the theories that I've had on this, and maybe you would chime in on this for me, is that when I look at America and I look at how all of us at one point our families immigrated here.
Yes.
Right? And so you have this immigration of all walks of life, except for Black Americans, right?
That's right.
They were brought here as slaves.
Well, they were sold. They were bought by the Arabs and sold from the blacks, and they brought here.
And so when I look at it, I'm like, okay, then we have the civil rights movement, right? And that's where Black Americans become, in essence, free.
Yes.
Right? And so you have this pivotal moment where they become free. And then Lyndon Johnson, with his Great Society, pulls the rug out from underneath of them. So before the black community can coalesce around itself and build itself up, the government comes in and pulls the rug out from underneath of them and implements the welfare. Is that, am I right on that theory?
100% correct. Except it was also encouraged by the civil rights movement, because Lyndon B. Johnson didn't just do it by himself. He got the approval of the civil rights movement to do it. They offered them stuff and made them feel like they could be powerful and all that kind of stuff. And so, because the blacks just didn't believe it because Lyndon B. Johnson said it, they believed it because the civil rights so-called movement approved of it as well and encouraged it.
And why is it? Why is it all these years later? Because one of the things that I saw in your book that was what I really enjoyed about it was that you took this huge arch, right? You took the beginning of your life, but then the civil rights movement, and you followed it all the way through to where we're at today.
Yes.
Right? And you talk about key players along the way, like Sharpton, like Jackson, and others. And when you look at that, at least when I look at it, I'm like, wow, this really tells a story about how this movement, where it could have been so wonderful, has really failed.
Yeah.
Why? Where's the disconnect? Why does the black community still hang on so tightly to the Sharptons and the Jacksons of the world, the Farrakhan's of the world? Why don't they pull away from that?
Because first of all, blacks are angry, and then when you're angry, you believe into a lie, and once you believe into that lie, it controls you. Because we live by faith, and whatever we believe believes into us, and it controls us. And so the black people believed into this lie way back then with the so-called civil rights movement, and now they are being controlled by that. They can't help but believe it unless they, as an individual, pull away and start to question things, to say something is wrong here, to examine it, and then they can overcome it. But the so-called civil rights leaders, the race hustlers, and others won't let them do that because they love the power and wealth. And as long as they use this word racism and all that, they're going to keep black people under their control because most of the blacks believe that there is racism. Where I prove there's no such thing as racism, sexism, homophobism, Islamophobism, or deadbeat-dadism. It's either right or wrong, good or evil. And we knew that prior to the civil rights movement, but they believed into a lie. And they have made women feel better than men. They puffed their egos up to make them feel better and made the women feel like they don't need men. And men are angry about that too.
That's the one thing that I saw a lot. I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, the black woman is holding up the black community in so many ways. But that has to have the effect that you have over time for the men.
And they're not, it looked like they're holding it up, but they're destroying. They're not holding up. Because if you notice, most of these black children are raised by single women, and they're very violent. They hate white people. They're violent toward white people. They rely on the government in one form or another. They're having babies out of wedlock. The men are weak. The girls are weak. So they're not really holding it up. They're destroying it. And the country is just pretending that it's being held up.
And so I felt like
the anger that you see in black men and women is that of their mothers, not that of white people.
And so I I felt like in the 90s and in the early 2000s, things were, maybe they were just status quo. Maybe they didn't seem like they were getting worse, right? And then, Barack Obama came in.
The fallen Messiah.
And I just feel like everything went downhill from there.
Yeah.
And your book seems to echo that.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Barack Obama, I tried to warn the people not to vote for him, that he was a liar. And he was worse than Jesse Jackson, Louis Farrakhan, Al Sharpton, Jeremiah Wright Jr., all wrapped up in one. Because he was very slick with his stuff. And I said, don't vote for this man. He's a liar. And so they voted for him because he was black and because they hate white folks. And then white people voted for him thinking that, well, if we give black people a black president, maybe then they'll know we love them. I'm like, no, that's not going to work. You got to change the hearts of the people. Giving them something physical is not going to do it. And then they found out that Obama hate white people, the Jewish community, and America as much as Jackson and all those people do. And so under Barack Obama, and I call him the fallen Messiah, and I call him Michelle Obama, Big Mama.
Why that?
Because Michelle believed that we should feed our kids what she thought they should have, while she and her kids were picking out on hamburgers and like in the black community, Big Mama always get the biggest plate.
Well, I heard just recently that so they got rid of school vouchers in Washington D.C.
He did that,
right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time though, they're sending their kids to one of the most
100%.
prestigious schools in Washington D.C. you could
That's
go to.
how Jackson and all of them are. They send their kids to the best schools, they get the best jobs, while keeping black people down so that they can use them.
That's the disconnect that I have always had. Like, why? I mean,
For power and wealth.
But can't you get it by lifting everybody up at the same time?
No, because you can't control immoral people. You have to demoralize them. And so if black people were immoral people, they would be voting in other moral people. They wouldn't care about the color or anything like that. But because they have no morals anymore, they're amoral, they're voting in corrupt people. Corrupt people vote in corrupt government. And so the people that look at what they just voted in this last election, corrupt people. We have 5 or 6 Democratic women who are purely corrupt. A Muslim, maybe 2 Muslim, Indian, one is a lesbian, one is Cortez lived with a boyfriend, a socialist, a black woman married a man who already had a child. And we don't normally vote in those kind of people. We may find out later that they were immoral, but they don't let you know up front. But because they have demoralized our young people in society, these people gladly vote for corrupt people now. And so that's why Jackson and others did it to black people. They had to demoralize them in order to use them to gain votes and power and stuff like that. And as far as Obama, you're right. This country went to hell in a handbasket under Barack Obama. The races became more divided than any other time in the history of America.
I can't think of another time where it's been as divided as it is now.
That's right.
And then with intersectional politics as the play of the day, so to speak, where do you see, as time marches on, where do you see the black community going 10, 15, 20 years from now, the way it is now with so much division?
Number one is, one thing I want to say about Obama, we saw it coming clearly when they had that first incident in Massachusetts when the black professor accused
the
a white cop.
and then they had Beergate after
He said
that.
the cop acted stupidly. He knew nothing about the incident, but he took the side of the black professor because he's black. And then when he said if he had a son, he looked like Trayvon, that thug, Trayvon Martin.
Yep. If I had a son, he would have looked like Trayvon,
just
right?
like a thug, right? And then Black Lives Matter went around, one of the most radical, evil groups around.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's in my notes. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter is a radical, evil, agitative organization that was founded by black lesbians and black radical homosexuals and white social justice warrior, evil social justice warrior. And when they went around, and they are worse than the KKK, by the way, the Black Lives Matter group. And when they went around chanting, what do we want, dead cops, when do we want them? Now. And Obama invited them to the White House rather than punishing them for, or at least denouncing them for saying that about cops, and cops started to get killed right after that. He was for all that because he did not denounce it. He was for it. And that helped to divide the races, cause attacks toward cops and everything else. That man was and is an evil man. He's not. And I noticed that whenever Christians was accused of something, he would jump on the Christians. But when Muslim was accused of something, he would cover up for the Muslims. So I know he's not a Christian. I believe he's more of a Muslim than he is a Christian, because there was no Christianity about him at all. So he definitely divided the country. And we have not recovered from that yet.
No, we haven't recovered. And in fact, I mean, it actually like boggles my mind that they're blaming, listen, Trump, either for or against, I don't care. That's not what this comment is about.
Hope.
Well, but
I call him, I call him the Great White Hope.
I didn't know that you call him the Great White Hope.
I love the president.
Do you?
Oh, man.
Well, but so then the question is he the one who's divided us, or were we divided already when he came in?
We were already divided. We just didn't know it.
Yeah.
We didn't know how much. The president is exposing what was really going on, hidden under the cover by the right-wing Republicans, the Democratic Party, the never-Trumpers, the lying liberal media. It's been exposed like never before. So he hasn't done that. He just exposed it.
So how do you reconcile, though, Trump is not a very moral guy, right? I mean, you take the good with the bad with him.
He's not a what?
Very moral guy.
What has he done to imply that he's not moral?
Well, I think he cheats on his wife.
That was before he became president.
Oh, but not since.
Right.
So you make a distinction that way.
We all have a past, right?
Yeah.
And if God forgive us when we realize we were wrong, we're supposed to let it go too. What they're accusing the president of today is not who he is. And he had a past. That's over with. We should judge a man by who he is today. And he clearly demonstrated he's a good husband, good father, and a great president. He put the country first.
Well, I don't disagree with you on that. He is putting America first,
yeah.
But it's causing a lot of heartache in this country. And
not for me.
Well,
I'm getting my country back.
Well, and you talk about social justice warriors, white social justice warriors. They are a problem.
Yes, a big problem.
They're almost as much of a problem for the black community as Jackson and Sharpton. Can you talk about what it is that they're doing to enable? Because I think they're the ones who are enabling the media to be as malfeasant as the media are, right?
They pretend to be good people, and they pretend to be for the blacks and for the poor and all that kind of stuff, when they're really against them, and they're using them to create this violence and take over that they're trying to do. And so, but because blacks are angry and immoral, they think, because they call the right, they call them white supremacists and stuff. Yeah. When these people on the left are the ones that think that they're supremacists over everybody, power over everybody, because they're the one forcing their will on people. If you don't do what they want or say what they want, they become violent and angry. With the help of the media, though, they made the good guys look like the bad guys, and make the bad guys look like the good guys. But the social justice warriors are just using, because they're communist socialists, and they really want to turn America into a socialist society. No. And so they're using the blacks by pretending that they care about the black people in order to help to usher in socialism. That's what's really going on.
And where do you think the black community at large stands on that, socialism versus capitalism? Or do you think that that's where they're going to make the socialists are going to make their first inroads with the black community, or do you think that they'll resist that? Because when you look at the black community, they're religious. They're really more conservative than maybe they let on to. I mean, you remember when Proposition 8 didn't pass in California.
187, right?
No, 8 for the gay marriage.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That did not pass in California primarily because of the black vote.
Yeah.
So again, where there's a disconnect there. You have a kind of what seems to me to be a somewhat conservative society or group, community, and they go for these liberal ideals.
I know that a lot of people think that black people are religious or Christian people, but they're not. They're just angry and very emotional.
What, here in L.A. or what about in the South?
All over.
All over.
Because we just saw that election with the senator down in Alabama, where the black women voted for the liberal Democrat over the conservative one that ran. I can't think of his name right now. Down in Alabama, there, Montgomery area.
Yep.
But black people go to church, they read the Bible, they yell, hoop, and holler, and scream, and carry on. But it's just like a night at the club. They're so emotional, so they cry. They go to church and cry about stupid stuff. And they pretend to be of God when they're really not. They're not children of God. They read about him and know about him, but when you look at their lifestyle, they don't live that example. They have babies out of wedlock. They sleep around with different men and women. They hate the white man. And if you love God, you can't hate anyone. You can't even hate your enemy. You speak up, but don't hate. They're still relying on government. Their kids are having babies out of wedlock, repeating the same cycle that the adults are doing. They are attacking white people, rob, murdering, killing, and raping. And the black men and black women don't get along. So they're not really Christians. They just say they are because they go to church, but that's not who they are. And I'm hoping for a change because I'm starting by way of our organization, Bond.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Bond.
Yeah, we are rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. And we show all people how to overcome that anger. They got to go and forgive their mothers and return to their fathers. And some of them are starting to do that. Even the Bible says that there will come a day when I will return the children to the fathers and the fathers to the children. That day is at hand. And so there are a lot of blacks, not only in this country, but around the world, who are starting to do that, and their lives are changing for the good. I have hope that the ones who are waking up can save not only the black people, but the country. Sometimes I wonder, but I have hope that it will come.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on that too. So here at Bond, young men come to you,
yes,
and you provide what to them so that they can help them rebuild their lives?
We are nonprofit, so we tutor, we counsel, we have a home for young men, we help find jobs, we have an entrepreneur academy where we help start businesses, because a lot of these guys have good ideas, so we help them start their own business. We bring in speakers, men who are in business or have been in business before, and they kind of answer questions for them about whatever the needs are. But the guys go out and do the work themselves, but we help point the way. And we started a credit union because a lot of these guys don't have credit or they have bad credit. And so we loan them the money, they pay back with interest, small interest, so that we can keep the credit union going. And that's for all men. We work with all men, doesn't matter what color. And the Entrepreneur Academy is for 15 years and up. You have to be at least 15 years old, male, all the way up. And we show them how to forgive by going and forgiving their parents first, their mothers especially. And the reason I stress the mother thing, because a lot of people don't know that it's the mother who brings on the destruction, not the father. And the mother lie about the father because they hate the fathers. And so they grow up thinking they hate their fathers when really they hate the mothers. But they have identified with her and they're afraid to admit it. So we show them how to forgive them first, and so God can forgive them, and then they'll move on with their lives. But they got to drop the anger first.
And when did Bond start?
1990. We've been around 28 years.
That's an impressive record.
Yeah.
And what kind of
the Lord is willing and the creek don't rise. It's going to be 29 years this February 2019.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. No help from the government, not one day. We've stayed away from the government.
Well, amen to that. And you know, then you can attest to how nice that feels to not have to survive off the government.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Less government in your life, the better off you are.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that that's what you're teaching here as well.
Absolutely.
Right? Is that when you have a young man that comes in, who finally comes in off the street, how do they normally find you? What brings them? What gets them here? Do they hear about it from somebody?
They hear about it from other people. They either listen to my radio show or they saw me in some other media form, or read some of my books, or
I saw you on YouTube.
YouTube, or a radio show or something like that.
Yeah. And so when they come to you, are they typically at rock bottom at that point, or where are they at in the kind of the?
They're ready to feel better. They're ready to overcome their anger. They're ready to be more independent. And if they're in relationships, especially if they're married, they're ready to overcome being controlled by their wives or being afraid to stand up.
And then do you also have counseling for both the husbands and wives?
Absolutely. We counsel with families, individuals, or even we have meetings sometimes. We just have group counseling as well.
And what's the impact on Black women in America having to be at the center, so to speak, of the community right now, and to come to that realization that there's a lot of anger from the men harbored towards them, for good or for ill,
Yeah.
right? How does that work?
Well, some of the women, when they hear that they're the problem and not the man,
Yeah.
they some apologize, but most are so egotistical that they will not apologize. They will see you die before they apologize. But it's okay, because once you forgive, God will forgive you. And it doesn't matter if the person apologizes or say, I'm sorry, or anything, because the thing that holds you back in life is when you are angry, resent, or judge someone, it separates you from God, and you will never have peace. Satan is your daddy until you forgive, so that he can bring you back into the kingdom of heaven within.
And on your success stories, do you have lots of success stories where men have come in at kind of ground zero and you've got them out and on their own?
Absolutely. We have many on our website. People can go to rebuildingtheman.com or bondinfo.org. We have all types of testimonies there as well. And it's so interesting is that we are not only helping people in this country, but around the world. I get calls from Russia, Africa, Great Britain, all over.
Yeah, I heard that, and it surprised me because it seems such a uniquely American problem, but apparently it's not.
It's the same everywhere, because it's not about color. It's not about male or female. It's about spirit. It's a spiritual battle. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities of wickedness in high places. So it's never about color, but the people of the children of the light say it's about color. It's a physical thing, but it's not. It's a spiritual thing. And as soon as you get to know yourself and you forgive, your whole world changed for the good. I have perfect peace. I've been had now, thank God, for 29 years, and I've gone through more in the last 29 years than I've had to go through in my entire life, but I'm better for it and not bitter at all. Love me, I just don't hate. I don't hate anyone. I don't get angry at anyone. I speak up, I stand up, but I don't resent you at all. Because I know you can't help yourself. You know, they can't help themselves. It's that spirit that's in them make them do the things they don't want to do or wouldn't ordinary to do.
What do you think then for the future of the country at this point? Like we've talked about where we are. How do we get past it? How do we bring people together and offload this constant racism? I mean, I understand there's going to be racism. That's never going to go away.
There is no racism. It never existed. So we got to stop saying it and pretend that it never existed.
I think there's got to be racism.
What's the proof?
I didn't know you'd say that. But well, I mean, listen. Look at Jim Crow laws, for instance.
That was a racism.
What was that?
That was a bad law, a desire to control the people. That was evil.
Based on what? I mean, like any Ku Klux Klan person is going to be the epitome of racism, right?
No, it would be evil. They would be angry. The Ku Klux Klans are no different than the Jeremiah Wright Jr.'s or the Louis Farrakhan. They hate white people. And same thing with the KKK. At one point, they hated black people. So it didn't start out that way. The KKK started because black people, along with whites, had built the Republican Party, and black people were getting positions in Congress, and they were really doing it up. The party was growing, and so the KKK was started to try to destroy the party, not the black people. That just came later after the Jim Crow thing started, that they started to hate.
So is it better to say then your outlook on it is really in terms of evil versus racism?
Without a doubt. Racism, when I was growing up, we never heard the word racism. You would think that I'm having to go to all black schools, I couldn't go into any bathroom of choice, I couldn't live in a place of choice. You would think that we would have heard of racism then. It wasn't even made up yet. It was called hatred, it was called wrong, it was called evil. And there were whites and black who disagreed with it.
And so, again, how do we get past this? How do we move forward from where we're at? Because right now, seems to me to be the worst time
It is. It's bad.
I've ever experienced.
Yeah,
I mean, you were around in the 60s. I don't think it was this bad in the 60s,
No,
was
it wasn't.
Yeah. So
No, this is the worst time. It started with Barack Obama. I think the worst time started under Barack Obama. It just got worse ever since then. But the way out is that...
And are you alone in that? Like, if you have a private conversation with another black guy or a black woman, do they feel like he was the greatest of all time, or do they look back at it and they're like, I'm not quite so sure on this guy?
That's
what's your sense
good question. Those who are still angry, but they're blaming white people, think Obama was the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
They think even white people held Obama back from doing what he wanted to do. I'm like, I'm glad they did, because it would be over if they had not. But those who have overcome anger, they would tell you that, even in private, they would tell you that Obama was the worst thing. But I get calls on my radio show when they were saying Obama, they thought he was the best thing. They voted for him, they regret it now because they're waking up. And Obama did nothing for the black people. For some reason, they thought he was going to do something for them.
Yeah, that's what kind of the prevailing theory was at the time, and I don't know that happened.
It did not happen. In Chicago, the crime got worse, black on black crime rather than getting better. And that's where he was from. Around the country, nothing got better. Black was unemployed. Everything just got worse. And so they realized he didn't do it. But those angry black people blamed that on the white people. They blamed the old bad Republicans. But then those who are now can see what's going on, they know it was him. He never intended to do anything. And the way that it's going to change, especially now, is that men got to wake up, especially white men. White men are afraid to tell the truth for fear of being called racist. And white men are under attack. If they do speak up and tell the truth, they run the risk of losing their jobs or being destroyed with that phony word racism. But they got to get over that. So men, if you know the boys and men are under attack now, they're the most hated species on this side of heaven. Yeah. And so when men overcome fear and start speaking up and dealing with this stuff, things will change. It's going to take men. Women can't do it. It's not in them. It's in the men. So men got to become men again.
I'm a little cynical right now. I'm not sure that that's going to happen anytime soon.
I know what you mean, but I think it will. I'm hoping that I haven't given up, and I still feel real strongly about it, that God loves us, and he didn't just give us this country because he had nothing else to do, and he gave the power to the men. And that's why the attack is upon the man, because he's the Christ on earth, and they're trying to destroy the Christ by calling him a molester, an abuser, a rapist, and all kind of crazy stuff. But if he got over that fear, we could save the country. No material thing can do it. Not letting women take over. By letting women take over is not going to do it. It's in the man.
That's got to be pretty unpopular for you to say things like to not let the women take over, especially right now where they're trying to elevate women to every high level that they can. I mean, they just passed a law in California that the publicly traded companies have to have a woman on their board by 2020 now.
That's amazing. And if you notice, whenever women take over, things get worse. They don't get better. When I was growing up, the black community, as long as men were in charge, got better. It didn't get worse. It's getting worse now. Likewise, the country, the more they so-called elevate the woman, the worse things get. Look how much confusion is going on now. And look how many things that they have allowed to happen that we wouldn't ordinarily allow. Homosexuality, so-called same-sex marriage, abortion, now transgender. Whoever thought that you would accept a transgender as a norm? We knew they were mentally ill, right? And we tried to help them. But now it's pushed as a norm. And now you have little boys who are confused, saying that they're girls, and little girls thinking that they're boys, and the mothers are too weak to say no. So it's just getting worse because the men are not in control. The more you put the women in control, the worse it's going to get.
And how much are you attacked for these points of view? Because these are not popular points of view right now. And if I said what you just said, oh Lord, like good luck to me.
Are you afraid to say it?
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Why are you afraid?
Well, I'm afraid for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, this isn't my primary job, right? So I have a job that if somebody saw me say something that was controversial, potentially that could hurt my business, right? That's one reason. I think that, the public today is not very informed. They're not very mature anymore. And the Twitter mobs and the Twitter trolls and whatnot, it is a fearful time to speak honestly in America right now.
So if you don't do it now, and these things are getting worse, will there ever be a time when you can speak up?
You're bringing up a great point, and that's something that I think about a lot.
So you got to do it now, otherwise it's going to get worse. Yeah. 20 years ago, it wasn't this bad.
Yeah, no,
That's because men didn't speak up. 30 years ago, it wasn't this bad, and then 20 years ago, because men wouldn't speak up. And if you don't ever speak up, it's only going to get worse, and they're going to do to you what they're doing in South Africa. When the people of color take over the government, they're going after white people.
They are.
They're going to take their land, they're going to kill them, they're going to rob them, they're going to rape them. And that's what they're going to do as they take over our government.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's going to take, especially for men, but especially white men, to speak up.
Well, I do think that at some point, there is a tipping point, right? There's a tipping
point
point where...
If you're not tipping now, I don't know what it's going to take to make you tip.
Yeah.
It's bad now.
It is.
It's real bad.
It is. That's why I asked the question, like, how do we move forward? How do we get past it?
Speaking up and telling the truth, and then fighting back.
Yeah.
If the women accuse you, you tell the truth about them.
Yeah.
If they try to get you arrested, have them arrested.
Yeah.
You got to fight back.
Yeah, you had that this weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They attacked me.
Tell me about that. What happened?
I was at the Women's March.
Yep.
And long story short, I was interviewing people about why they were there and stuff.
Yep.
And these women walked up to me. I didn't even go over to them. They came to me and yelling and screaming.
Did they know who you were?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if those two particular ones did.
Yep.
But I know a whole lot of people out there did, because they were taking pictures with me and they really liked it.
Right.
And then some were saying, "Oh, I know who that is, though. That's the Slut Walk Man." Because I did this interview with Amber Rose on Slut.
I didn't see that one. I've got to watch that one.
That was so good.
I'll tell you which one I saw, but keep going with your story.
And so they came over, so I said, "Oh," so she was yelling and screaming. I said, "Why are you here?" She got mad and mad. Next thing I knew, she put 7-Up on me, and then she kicked me, and then the woman that's with her looked like a lesbian. I don't know. She attacked me and put more coke, and she attacked, and one thing just led to another one.
And you got the cops involved?
I got the cops involved. I filed a complaint.
Did they hook them?
Not yet that I'm aware of, but we will.
They know who they are?
They know who they are.
Oh my goodness. Now, is it like
and
that?
We got to fight back.
But is it like that for you more and more now? Or?
Yes, because they don't want any truth out there. They don't want anyone to oppose the lie. And if we let them keep doing it, that's what's going to happen. It's just going to get worse. That's why I'm wondering, do you love what's right, or do you love your job more?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that I've always loved what's right.
So then how you going to put your job before that then?
Yeah, it's tough when you've got a family and you're, I mean, I'm being honest and saying you're right.
Yeah,
I mean, those are hard decisions to make when you've got a family to feed and you want to care for them and you want to make sure that they're safe and whatnot.
You don't believe that God will provide for you if you love Him first and do the right thing?
Yeah, that you are right on that. And I'm a converted Catholic. My wife was Catholic, cradle Catholic, and I converted in 2008.
From what to what to Catholic?
I was kind of I was quarter Jew, and then but never did that, and was Methodist because I actually grew up in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
So nearby, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And so I experienced that. I might ask you about that too, because you said something in your book. The theme of it reminded me of something at Kentucky that maybe you can touch on, but I'll get to that in a second. But the point is this: you're right. Anytime that I have put my faith in God and said God will provide, every time.
That's right.
Every time.
They're going to end up taking your job anyway if you don't stand up, because they're going to get worse. And simply that you're white, well, I say you're Jewish, but you look white and male.
I'm a target right now.
Yeah, if they don't do it to you, they're going to do it to your children. It's going to happen if you don't speak up.
Yeah.
Ain't no way around it. And then so if you lose your job and then you don't have faith in God by standing up, you're going to have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at least God will give you another job or make a way for you if you stand. You know what I mean?
I tell you, it is hard to do right now. They do have, everybody is running scared right now.
Yeah.
Unless you're of the certain, unless you're black, female,
right.
lesbian, gay, right? I mean, if you're in the intersectional coalition, you're okay. But
Yeah. But black conservatives are not protected either.
yeah.
Because what they did to me, they would never have done to a liberal black.
Well, you're like a unicorn, right? there aren't very many black conservatives, at least that are public.
That's
black
right.
conservatives.
Because they're afraid too. And some of the black conservatives hate white people too.
Yeah.
They just into the conservative movement because they think black should be in both parties, kind of thing.
Right. But they still hate white people.
They still hate white people.
Well, and you've brought that up so many times about the hatred towards whites. And when I was a police officer down in San Diego in the black community, the most amount of racism I ever experienced was from the black community.
Yes, that's right.
Nobody else
That's right.
I ever experienced it from.
Yeah. The blacks are the most violent people too. And all the other cultures know it. And they really don't like black people. They don't want to be around them. And if they're around them, they have to appease them, be nice, because they don't want to be accused of being racist. They don't want to have to get into a fight. So they just kind of go along just to get along for a minute.
And that seems to me, in a lot of ways, it's like when I grew up in the South in Kentucky, and I experienced what you experienced. Like racism just wasn't like a thing, right?
That's right.
In fact, I remember as a kid, I'm glad you brought this up because now I can tell this story. As a kid, I one time was invited to go to a restaurant called N. Mary's. The N-word Mary's was the name of it.
Oh, okay.
Right? And at the time I was like, what? yeah, that's where we're going to go. We're going to go to N. Mary's. And I was like, okay. And being young and not really have heard that word, but knew that word was a bad word.
Right.
And not really knowing where we're going. And we went there and it was like, it was the greatest place.
That's right.
Everybody was there, right?
Right.
And Mary, who was behind the counter serving up the food, she knew they called it N. Mary's.
Yeah.
And we've turned that word into a really horrible negative.
That's right.
And the way it's used today, it is. But back then, it was like, for the lack of a better term, and maybe you can clean this up for me, but it was almost like a collegiate atmosphere. It was like, we're here together. This is a thing. Yeah, we're going to call it N. Mary's. Mary calls it N. Mary's. And we just come and we eat together.
In reality, it's still not a big thing. It's an illusion that is a big thing because the race hustlers and those who desire power and wealth are using it, pretending that it's a big thing in order to control you. But because they say it, they do whatever they want.
They say it all the time.
And they don't care. Like, oh, no big thing. But if a white person says it, they'll say it, they'll pretend like they care in order to destroy you, to get free stuff, to get more power, to get more wealth. But they don't really care about that word at all. It's still no big thing.
And do they really care about their community?
No. Because if they cared about the community, they would encourage marriage, because they know it's better to have two parents.
Yes.
They would have the criminals arrested and punished for what they've done. They would clean up all the crime and stuff that's happening so jobs can come back. Because even black people are afraid to start businesses in those communities. And so if the people really cared about that, those things they'll be working on. But they don't even talk about that. They don't talk about the family, restoring the family, the real thing to do, And then they would be for the Second Amendment so that those people who are living in those communities, and especially those with no man, they can protect themselves.
Yes.
But they don't want that. They would talk about school choice, the voucher system, so that the parents who don't want to put their children into those bad schools can have a choice. They send their kids to better schools.
That's right.
But they don't want you to have that choice because they want you brainwashed, dumbed down, and demoralized so they can control you.
And are there other bonds like you as well? Are there others out there that are trying to spread this message so that the community can, over time, hopefully be lifted up from this morass that
we are working
in?
on opening other chapters right now, but due to the finance, we are not. We had done it at one time, and then that economic crash happened. We had to shut them down. But there are people starting to wake up and at least put the message out there. And we'll be opening more chapters. But yes, people are being brave now and just telling the truth because they can now see and they understand what's going on. And they know they have to speak up, otherwise it's going to get worse.
And for you, where do you see Bond in the next 5-10 years? How much longer are you going to, keep doing it till
That's a good question.
forever?
To be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and I've been that way since I started Bond. I never knew what would happen next, so I never had a plan. I never had a 5-year plan or 10-year. I just take it on day by day, and as long as God says so, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna keep it rolling. And if God's in it, then that's where it's meant to be. So I don't have a plan. I've never had a plan since day one, and it's just been amazing what's been happening all over the world. So because when you overcome the anger, then He'll guide you, and He'll have you do what He wants you to do, and can no one stop that. So we're just taking it one day at a time.
And so if somebody wants to get in touch with Bond, how are the ways that they can do that?
Thank you. They can go to rebuildingtheman.com, rebuildingtheman.com, or call 800-411-BOND, 800-411-2663. And then I have a radio show I do every day, Monday through Friday, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. They can go to JLP Talk. JLP Talk.
And I'll put all these links down in the description below as well on the YouTube so that they can get them as well.
But just in closing, I feel like we're closing.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to get better until men get better. Ain't no other thing going to make it better. It's only going to get worse. And especially if they keep elevating women, it's going to only get worse. Mm-hmm. Because it's in the man, and women look to men, and men look to Christ, and Christ look to God.
Now, I'll leave it then with this quote, because this is from your book that I really liked. It said, "Instead of fretting about how imperfect their lives are, I challenge Black Americans to get over their blackness and start building character. Yeah. Over the past 50 years, blacks have been seduced away from character and truth."
Absolutely. 100%. It used to be about character prior to the Civil Rights Movement. Now it's about color. They're so into the color thing, is a shame. And nobody else is allowed, especially white people, are not allowed to be into color. It's only the blacks and the Hispanics and the Mexicans and the Chinese and everybody else. But not white people. Yeah. They won't let you be into your color. It's not about color, it's about character.
Well, what you're doing here at Bond is heartwarming for me. It's uplifting for me. I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for coming on my podcast.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure,
Anytime,
Jesse.
and thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have a lot of respect for you as an officer, when you were an officer, that you would get up in the morning, leave your family, not knowing if you were going to return home or not, and dealing with angry people who hated you, and all you were doing, looking out for them. And they hated you, so God bless you for that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, man.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jesse.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cameron Jackson Show. Remember, you can listen to us on podcast or watch us on YouTube. We want to know what you think. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you'd like to see more of. Leave your comments down below. We read them all. You can also contact us via email, CameronJacksonShow@gmail.com. And if you liked what you saw today, give us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. This studio is funded by my company, C. Jackson Investigations. Need to find someone, run a background check, or catch a cheating spouse? C. Jackson Investigations can handle all of your investigative needs. To learn more, go to cjacksoninvestigations.com.